Welcome to the Grizzled Geologist Podcast. I'm Keith Carden, and I brought my buddy Scott Casso from Casso Land Imaging Services to come on the podcast and talk about land and imaging. Those are actually things I care about quite a bit. But before we get started, make sure that you go to my YouTube page, The Grizzled Geologist. I'm also on Spotify. Make sure you subscribe to my channel, like my videos, hit the notification button so you will be notified of the stuff coming in. As always, I'm looking for more guests. I have no shortage at the time, but over the next month or so, I've got some life changes that are starting to happen that are really big, including probably moving from Oklahoma City. But we'll cross those bridges when we get there. But in the meantime, I'm looking to stack some people in some recordings. So feel free to reach out to me. The best place to do so is on LinkedIn, but through my website, thegrizzledgeologist.com, or my YouTube channel, wherever you want to find me, I'm actually fairly easy to reach. You can even ask Scott. I'll get right back to you, won't I?
Yeah, 45 minutes ago, I think we scheduled this one.
That's right.
This is kind of a weird one because a lot of times I meet people on LinkedIn and then I do exactly what my parents told me not to do, and I go and meet those people in real life in person.
Yep.
And so
Exactly.
this has been kind of a unique one because I think we'd kind of known each other from online, just from, the content and things like that. But
Totally.
really the first time I met you was in person. And then we were like, hey, what do you do? Normally I know all these things before meeting someone. I'm like a stalker almost,
Yeah, totally.
So I didn't know much about you until we started talking at the event that we met each other at. And then, it came up that you record a pod. And I was like, I love talking, so why not? Let's make this work. And I was having lunch, and we were supposed to have a pod later this week, but you shot me a message and said, "Hey,
Yep.
some conflicts. What you got going today?" I said, "Well, pop the camera open. We'll get this going right now."
Yep. And
Thanks
I
for
love
having
that.
me.
Dude, thanks for coming on, man. And that's exactly right. That's the flexibility. That's just the free form that I really like. Like you said, we'd met at an event that Brian McDowell hosted here in Oklahoma City. If you
Yep.
don't know who Brian McDowell is, he's kind of a data guy, and he is collecting logs and all sorts of attributes from well log headers and other, very important information for the drilling, and scanning, compiling, and serving that up to his client. So
Yeah, he's
we
the well log king in my eyes,
well, and there's a lot more to it. I'm gonna have. He said
for
he
sure.
he did say he would come on the podcast, but it goes beyond that. It goes down to the spacing. How they're gonna drill these wells, and actually. I'm so glad I went to that event because I really learned a lot. I've been kind of contract working for Brian, helping him out with some kind of basic stuff having to do with software. But anyhow, we met at this event, and really it was super casual. We're both in shorts, and we're like, hey, we're talking around the table. Next thing you know, we're kind of in passing because people start to see. And on my way, I'm like, dude, do you want to come on the podcast? They're like, yeah, hand me your card, and
Yeah.
here we are.
Yep.
Anyway, Scott Casso, you have a family business.
I do.
The whole family was there at the event,
Yep.
and up to dad.
Yeah,
And you
he
guys,
even forgot my dad made it out that day.
yeah, he was out there.
Coming to. I was using him as a sounding board that afternoon for some ideas and some ways I'm taking the business. He worked for Anheuser-Busch for 25 years of his life, and I respect him a lot. And so I was bouncing some ideas off him, and I said, I'm running late to a happy hour. He's like, I'm gonna come with you.
There you go.
He came. My brother was there. My brother and I worked together. We've worked together since the very beginning.
Nice.
So it's a small family-run deal.
Great.
I wouldn't have it any other way. Some people say that family and friends and things like that get in the way and make it hard to run a business, but my brother and I have fought enough to work through it. Some people use therapy, and me and him, because we're blood related, we can actually get physical with each other.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'll tell a funny story real quick. One day we were so mad at each other, and we've come significant, distance as of late even.
Great.
I've been working on myself quite a bit. I stopped drinking about 2 years ago, and so there's a lot of different things that kind of play into that. Yeah, I was having some weird medical stuff surrounding epilepsy and seizures and things, and it just was an appropriate time for me to stop drinking. And for me personally, no, negative views on anyone else that does drink, but for me personally, It needed to happen. And it's helped with the success of the business and relationships with my brother and relationships with everyone in the business and even at home. So,
well, and I've had, just real quick, let me jump in before you get to your story. I've had other guests on here. So I can't, I'm really not a drinker. I'd stopped actually back before, and we won't get into it too much, but I do occasionally have a drink. Like I had a single beer that night at that event, but I'm 100% with it. And the non-judgmental part
Yeah.
of the people that do
I
like,
mean, I co-hosted that happy hour with Brian, so obviously I still like being around the
yeah,
environment and letting people have
yeah,
a good time, let their hair down, things like
yeah,
that. For me, it just never stopped at that one beer. So
yeah,
it was convenient time in my life. I have young kids, and so it's made it, impactful for me to spend quality time with them and remember these times with them and all of
yeah,
that. But back to fighting,
yeah.
my
Let's do it.
brother, God, during the worst fight we ever had, I'm on a bicycle because I have epilepsy and I don't drive a car very frequently. I'll drive
Okay.
around town every once in a while, but I commute via bicycle. And we got into this big fight, and I know myself. I'll admit this. I said the last word that was like a dagger, and he was like, "I'm not letting you just end this." And I hopped on my bike and took off. And you could hear his tires squealing down the street, chasing me home. And I'm hitting sidewalks, and he's turning down side streets, and we're overlapping each other. It was comical at the end of it, but
Oh,
he chased me all the way to my house, and we finally hashed it out. But that's what it's like working with family. So
yeah.
if you're not prepared to get chased down on a bicycle with a
With the car.
four-door truck, you're probably not in the right line of business.
Yeah, I would
Um,
agree. And that's hilarious in Total Brothers, though,
yeah,
But it looks like you guys get along really good and you've got a
we do.
successful
Yeah.
business.
Yep.
You guys are both kind of exercise guys, it looks like. That's pretty
We
cool.
are, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
like that was my new addiction after I had to kick alcohol, was finding something to do with my time and my energy.
Yeah.
I'm a really high energy person, and so
Hmm.
I've got to dump that out into certain things. And for me, working out was something that like I could see noticeable changes. I felt better. I liked the
Yep.
people that I was around. All of those people have similar mindsets as far as bettering themselves, working towards goals, setting new goals that seem unachievable, and all of those things, which are important to me, being
Hmm.
a business owner and things like that doesn't want to just be stagnant in, what we're doing. I'm not okay with just the, status that we're at now. I'm constantly moving and wanting more, and maybe not aggressively or selfishly, but like I see that. I see that in the people that I'm around in the gym and
Yeah.
running. I run quite a bit, and the
Okay.
running folks are kind of a breed of their own. But
They are.
yeah, so all of that plays into it.
I'm a big fan also. And,
Cool.
for me, about the same thing about, 2020, it was for me. I was always an athlete, but, at that point, that's when you realize if you're going to be bald, you better be buff.
Yeah,
So, that's when that was a big life change. And the only reason I bring that up is just the mental clarity and the way that you feel about yourself,
100%.
And it's one of those things you just have to make yourself do it. I'm kind of a simple guy. I like yoga and swimming,
Yep.
I swam in
Easy.
college, as a matter of
Yep.
fact. And so those two things keep you lean and strong.
Yep.
And, sometimes it's just you have to make yourself get on that mat in the morning,
Yep.
like leave it out kind of a thing. But the consistency is what matters. So I just
For
wanted
sure.
to say I noticed, dude. I could tell you
Yeah,
guys work
thanks.
out, and
Thanks, dude. Yeah.
I like that. So
I'll
anyway,
turn this. You can see our little homemade gym here in the
that's all
office.
you
We've got
need.
this. We've got that for the lunch breaks.
That's
So
what you
I'm
need.
actually sitting at my brother's desk because they're putting in a bar next door and they're drilling some things in the wall by my desk. And so I'll come bother him when we're doing kind of like our weekend wrap up. I'm sitting over here doing pull ups and
Yeah. No,
things
that
like
all you
that.
need is that pull-up bar.
That
That
pull up
little sit
bar,
up
it'll
over there.
get you.
You got
Yep.
pull, you got
Yeah.
pull up. So that's awesome. All
So
right.
yeah,
Well, you got 3 kids,
I
and
got 3 kids.
didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, it's cool. I was just kind of getting into a little bit about me. I've got 3 kids. I'm married. Love my wife to death. I've got 3 beautiful little girls, 1, 3, and 5. Two of them kick off. 2 of them kick off into kindergarten and pre-K on Wednesday of this week. So
Yep. No,
they'll
thank
be out
God
of the
school is
house.
starting. Yep.
Yep. So school's starting. I think everybody's a little excited. I'm gonna miss coming home and seeing them on my lunch break, but I think even they need a break from us sometimes.
Mine are a little older, and it's get to school.
Yeah. And I'm thankful my wife has been so supportive. She stopped drinking when I stopped drinking, which was, super helpful for me.
That's a
And
big
it
deal.
showed her dedication to wanting me to, be healthy and not have seizures anymore and all of these things. So,
Yeah, that's
and that's been
amazing.
helpful. And she's an even bigger support of the business. She
So is she an
doesn't,
actual employee?
she's not, no.
Okay.
She doesn't have a job
But
currently.
she supports you.
She supports me 100%, and it's a lot. I am an animal to support. I need I need everything from, a hug when I come in at the end of the day to a rub on the back to a, hey, everything's going to be all right. I really need that. She's so much more stoic than I am. And I feel terrible about this. Her mother died about a month ago, at a very young age. And it's sad, but like she is able to just be so stoic and she deals with things right. And, I'm like, hey, do you want to see a therapist? Because I get huge help out of therapy. And she's like, totally. I feel like I'm handling myself well. And she really is. It's not like a lie. It's not anything like that. And so she has been a huge backbone to this business as well. I mean, from day one when we were just dating and she saw me going off on my own and starting this, she was like, I guess the guy I'm dating is starting a company and then we're going to get married and then we're going to have kids and we're all doing this in the background. She's been, shout out to her. She's been a huge support during this. Couldn't be here without her. And, her name is on the business too. It's not just Scott Casso Land Imaging. It's, right. The whole family. So right. She's a tremendous support. And even though she's not on the payroll, she ought to be, Oh,
that's amazing. Yeah.
But she allows me to, I had a vision for this company when I started it, and it was applying technology into a space that I saw was needing more technology applied. When we started the company, people were still sharing data via thumb drives. Occasionally, you were still burning a CD for somebody. I mean, this is only 10 years ago,
I remember that. Of course. Yeah.
And so some of those technologies have been like large file sharing systems, the type of equipment we use out in the field, all of those things. Mm-hmm. And so, I saw this vision when I was in this. I saw people, getting overpaid for a job that they weren't overperforming at. They were underperforming at these jobs. And getting paid, 5 days a week, maybe showing up at the courthouse 3 or 4 of those days. And I just, none of that sat well with me. And a couple of guys from Tulsa took a risk on us and gave us a little bit of work. And my brother and I went out at that point and started performing the work, but also hustling up as much work as we could. I knew a lot of people in the industry at that point. I had been working for a company for some time and
in the imaging and land business already?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Started out in the courthouse. So that's where I got my feet wet, was going out to the courthouse, pulling documents.
And that's a perfect place to start. Tell a little bit about that, but let's talk a little bit about what land people do.
Yeah, for sure.
I've got different guests coming on the show and I haven't had a landman on yet.
For sure. And this is a geology podcast. Yeah.
Well, it is kind of, but
it's run by a geologist.
It's run by a geologist. Yeah. That's what I would say,
Well, and and pardon me, I've been on a few podcasts in the last month or so, and it's all been land related. I mean, one of them was even the Real Deal Landman show. So it's, it's all about landmen. So
yeah.
Not to plug them here or anything, but there's their plug. So
yeah, no, I love it. I like to think of myself as a oil and gas variety show with the rare charismatic geologist at the helm.
Yep. So landmen, so we consider ourselves an imaging company, and we consider ourselves a service company for landmen. Mm-hmm. Now, are we landmen? That is up to interpretation. A landman that's sitting in an office chaining title or leasing or doing something along those lines probably doesn't refer to us as landmen. They probably call us picture takers or imagers or, hey, those guys that are getting in my way when I'm doing stand-up, Yeah. But at the end of the day, we are trying to work with them. We look at ourselves as a service provider, but also, a way for these people to access their data differently. We're an ally for them, and we understand the documents and the things that they're needing to get their job done. So in a way, we are landmen to a degree. I'll put that in there as a small percentage of what we are. But a landman normally is chaining title. Even that is a broad term. I mean, you might be leasing, you might be buying, you may be chaining title, you may be curing title, there's a lot of different parts that come into the title process and the landman process. I always picture I have this image in my head of what a landman is, and it's a guy standing in a cowboy hat, wearing his cowboy boots and a shirt tucked into his jeans, and he's standing at the courthouse and he's smoking a cigarette while he's sitting there flipping through books, back when you probably could smoke in the courthouse. And that's what like you're the grizzled landman or the grizzled geologist. I think of like a landman as being like a grizzled old, guy out there doing that. And he knows where every document is in that county. And he knows, so-and-so married so-and-so and someone got a DUI and sold their land for this and, whatever that is. Yeah. And all of that's always been intriguing to me. So as history, I love Oklahoma history. I love history in general. Mm-hmm. And so all of these things, when you're kind of seeing the land transactions from, Oklahoma's inception all the way to current day, all of that stuff is kind of fascinating.
I like that too. There's some
Um,
places out in New Mexico, those Maxwellian land grants that are these huge tracts that have more or less stayed intact with surface and minerals together,
mhm.
and just another quick step back, for
Yeah.
those of the non, geology or land people or kind of non-technical oil and gas people, what sparks landmen and what their basic function is in this industry is to acquire the leases and the mineral rights for oil companies to be able to go and drill and produce these minerals.
Mhm.
The way that it works is that, these are split. Sometimes they're big tracts that cover several miles, and sometimes they go down to little minute pieces of property
Mhm.
that, maybe a single family lives on and they own that. That becomes a part of the bigger unit, and they are entitled to the production that comes out of that ground. And so what landmen do is they will go and approach these people and offer them a deal to be able to lease these minerals. That will leave, most of the revenue coming back to the oil company, but they get what's known as an overriding royalty interest that remains with them. That is just that is basically getting paid from the gross production of the wells.
Mhm.
So we go in and make deals with these people, but there are, in many cases, hundreds or up to, thousands of people that may be involved in these tracts of land that are being leased. And so that's kind of where companies like you get involved, because there's a lot of physical paper data and paper trails to all the ownership through the
Yep.
history since the inception of the state, essentially, to who owns these minerals and these surface rights. And so take it from there. I just wanted to give a little
Yeah.
bit of
And so
primer from my perspective.
absolutely. No. And thank you, because I realize we're not just talking strictly to landmen here. And so kind
Mm-hmm.
of framing that and painting that picture is important. And I'll use Oklahoma as a great example for most of the things we're talking about here, although we do service, the entire country. And actually, as of this year, I'm calling us international. We did some stuff out in the Gulf of Mexico. And so or Gulf of America, whichever way you want to call that now, but it's international waters to me. And so I'm
Yeah,
calling us an international company now. So
big deal.
in Oklahoma, you've got patents that start, sometimes around the 1900s into 10s is kind of the range we see. Some of them are a little bit before that, but that's when the U.S. was granting land to people out here. And so a lot of times when we're talking about, these tracts of land, and the guy that sits there and owns the surface today, well, it's wildly different than who owned it years and years ago. In a lot of cases, sometimes it's been passed down from family to family, but in certain circumstances, like we've got family up in northeast Oklahoma and Veneta, Oklahoma, and there's not a whole lot up there. So when all of this land ends up with us, if there's no leasing or anything like that to be done with it, we'll probably end up selling it. And so that's what happens is grandpa had the farm and the kids and the grandkids ended up selling. And this is a minute example, but just to kind of frame what this might look like.
But it spiders out.
Spiders out. And so they sold an acre and they sold an acre and those people split it and,
They
keeps
got
going and
married
going and going.
oh God. Yeah. Yep.
But this all starts with a chain of title, and that starts with the U.S. government patenting land or something to that degree. And then the chain from there is documents that show every transaction, just like, when you go to buy a house, you do your closing and they, the abstract company says, okay, well, Keith, you're selling Scott the house. Keith bought it from, Steve, that's how we are, or the landmen we're working for are chaining this out and tracing this,
Yep.
So you've got the
This parcel
original
is
owner.
located here, and these are the
Mhm.
ownership. This is what's on that land.
And here's all the documents related to that. And I think what a lot of people think is like, oh, you just get on your computer and you type in who owns this, and it shows up for you, And in certain areas, you may be able to go to like an assessor's office and figure out who owns the surface in those areas, but that's not what the oil and gas companies are after.
Right.
They're after the mineral rights that are underneath. And in Oklahoma, those rights were severed from the surface at a certain date. I can't remember exactly that date off the top of my head. A landman could probably tell you exactly that date, but
right. I wish I knew it too.
that basically meant that, in this situation where we're talking about grandpa's farm, let's say there's oil produced underneath, or we think there's oil under there. Well, we want to sell the surface because we're not going to come out to that farm anymore because it's out in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. But we want, any money that we can get out of the ground underneath that. And I think that's kind of where, those things started to separate there. Is they wanted to tie minerals to a certain area and they wanted to tie surface to a certain area. And so they were able to do that. And so we gathered documents. And some people may think, oh, well, Grandpa had this and he had it for 50 years. And who had that before him? Probably one other person. Well, that may be the case sometimes, but it may be the case also that this land has changed hands 15 times this year,
Yeah.
And you get into some areas, and when you're talking about the documents needed for this type of review, you may have an area where there's not a lot of action going on, and you're looking at 1,000 different documents. And I'm using that as a small number.
Yeah.
You may be going into certain areas and you're looking at 60,000 documents just for one tract of land, one 640-acre swath of land.
Yeah,
and you're looking at 60,000 documents. And some of these are large assignments and things like that, but it's still stuff that either has to be reviewed, analyzed, and here's the big kicker, digitized.
Yes, so that's exactly right. And that's where we're headed. And this is a big deal. And before we get going, I'll give the little primer on it. In all aspects of oil and gas, as Scott just demonstrated, these are thousands of documents. And it's the same thing on the geologic side. We've got well logs, we've got scout tickets, we've got production reports, we've got all these files that up until now, which technically we're still creating physical files, but we have, we are generating them in a digital fashion. But the last 100 years of oil and gas is all on paper, either down at the courthouse or at the State Geological Survey or whatever, engineering department, holds these records. But that's what people like your companies do. And I have a place near and dear to my heart because I've personally, at Revolution, for example, we inherited a bunch of documents since the formation of that unit in 1942, correct?
Yep.
And so it was the same kind of thing. And Jeff Hughes, our IT guy, had, we interfaced with people and digitized everything. And I'm a big guy on doing it. Back in the day when I owned my own little consulting firm back in 2010, scanning logs and stuff was a huge deal. So anyhow, I just wanted to say that this is a huge part of our business right now.
Yeah.
And the people that are compiling and doing this are doing not only a service to the business, but to just the general knowledge and the understanding and historical records of our land rights in the U.S., which again, just last little soapbox, sets us apart from every other country. That's the reason we see this wealth being perpetuated. And the vast amount of energy that we have is due to the fact that these are, for the most part, privately owned minerals, and it's not the federal or state governments that are dictating, who gets to produce this commodity.
Freedom.
It's freedom.
Yep.
So anyways, after my little spiel there, why don't you get into the imaging part?
Definitely. And one other thing I kind of wanted to mention about, what sets us apart from people like Brian McDowell and his service. Brian takes this data and does a lot with it. What we do is we create a lot of this data, or it's data that's paper and we're transforming it into a digital form. Brian takes it another step because he, knows what he wants to do with these logs. He knows that there's critical data that he can be pulling from them. And that's fantastic. Whereas us, there is strictly just a warehouse full of paper or a courthouse full of paper. And I think that's another thing that kind of surprises people. If landmen work in Texas, a lot of times they go on Texas File or wherever they're finding their documents, and everything in that courthouse is available. You got everything from inception all the way to current. You have to click through the pages, and sometimes you can even just put in the track you're wanting or whatever that is, and everything, very nicely shows up for you, and you can just sort through and filter what you need. In Oklahoma, that is just not the case. We've got everything from about 1990 in Oklahoma online in most counties, so people can access that. Even then, it's still kind of spotty in certain areas. So our job is going out and filling that gap. Most counties in Oklahoma, if 1907 is our statehood, sometimes we have documents, back to about 1890.
Okay.
We start about there and fill forward. So if you've got 1890 to 1990, if my math is right, we've got 100 years of stuff that we're filling in there. And it's a lot of documents. It's a lot of paper, and the way that they file things in the courthouse isn't by your specific area of interest. If you walk in and file a document, yours goes book 1, page 1. I go in and file one, even though my document is halfway across the county, I'm book 1, page 2. And so in order to even, you've got to kind of use for a lot of people that And I rarely say this because I'm in my mid 30s, but I may be dating myself here. If you've ever used like the Dewey Decimal System, finding a book in a library, that's kind of like what we have to do when we go to these courthouses. We have to go find the specific book, then we have to find the specific page within there, and the clerks of the courthouse give us what's called an index or a reference sheet.
I was going to ask if there's an index or reference sheet. I was
There
literally
is.
just going to ask that.
And so from there, we're able to see, okay, this was, Scott to Keith, and this is the book and page, but that still means you have to go and find that book. You have to find that page. You got to open the book to that page, find the first, maybe a 50-page document. So we've got to sit there with a handheld camera and take photos of these things.
So that's what I was going to ask, is the actual technology. So what do you take with you to the courthouse?
It depends on where we're operating. If it was my choice, every time we showed up somewhere, we would probably roll in with a few different pieces of equipment. Mm-hmm. But in Oklahoma, we are regulated to only a handheld camera. Some people use their phones, but we can't take these books apart, and so we can't feed them through like high volume scanners or anything like that. And they also won't let us come in and just take, if there's 1,000 books in there, we can't just take photos of every single page of every single book and then host them for ourselves or give them to a client. We sign something when we go in there that says we're not abstractors and we're not here to like gather all the data from these courthouses. We're there for a specific research intent. I mean, sometimes in some of these counties, they even want you to list what legal description you're looking at during that time that you're in there. So they, have a record of what you were doing while you were there. I think some people have had an issue with that, divulging areas of interest, but
yeah, sure.
Yeah, so we use this, this index to go and find all of these documents out there. And again, if I had my way, we've got these gooseneck scanners that take 2 photos at one time. They take a photo of each side of the page. They use
this stereoscopic deal that makes it.
They use auto flattening technology, so even if the book is folded up, it'll lay the document flat. And so something that would take 800 shots to get through an 800-page book is taking 400 shots, so we're cutting our production time in half just by that. And so that's where this technology is really, really, really interesting to me. Anything that we can do to we're not getting rid of these manual processes yet. We're not sending a robot into the courthouse with a plastic arm that's turning pages and taking photos of things, even though that robot doesn't exist, but that imaging machine does exist. We're not deploying that. So what can we deploy right now to start cutting back? AI is taking over is the big thing, and that's very true. It's very true. But in our circumstance, it's things like Adobe getting better at processing things. It's, the cameras we have having quicker, shuffles in between shots. It's applying all of these other things. It's when we can take in this dual camera that, takes photos of each side. When we can do those things, we're cutting time. And that's a huge thing here for us.
Cutting costs and increasing efficiency, cutting costs. And by that, you are improving your productivity and increasing your profitability. Let me ask you a quick question. So some places restrict you from going in and just carte blanche scanning to compile. You're not an abstractor, but are you allowed to kind of keep what you did have to go in there to do on a project by project basis, or does that become restricted later?
I'm glad you asked. So I have 12 terabytes of data on my Dropbox right now.
Mm-hmm. Got the pro plan, huh?
I would say of that data, the only stuff that we can reuse is 5% of it. I sign contracts with every single one of our clients that says their research intent is, their property and everything that goes into that, even the documenting, the pulling the documents, the imaging, even though these are public records. It's very important to me. We just had an ethics seminar last week with OCAPL and OKC, and that's the Oklahoma City Association of Petroleum Landmen, for people that aren't familiar with that. It's kind of it's not a regulatory body, because there's not really a regulatory body with landmen. There's not like a legal regulatory body, but it's like the one in the industry that we all kind of tip the cap to as having, the guidelines for ethics, and they have certifications that people, prefer landmen having and things like that. But ethics was the topic last week, and that's really where I rest my hat with all of my clients is, they know, even though we have a contract in place, without a contract in place, their data is their data is their data. Yeah. What we may do is if Chesapeake filed a, 2,000-page assignment somewhere, we'll probably save that particular document so we're not in there shooting that same document over and over and over and over again.
So you can't like serve it up and you'll be able to like reference some of the stuff that you've done.
No, unless it's for that client, like if they want us to update something or, whatever that is. And occasionally we'll get an order and we'll look through and see that they have actually ordered it before and say, hey guys, we've got these images already for you. Let's save a little bit of your time. And they go, oh yeah, we just didn't even look through the server. But yes, they are public records. Yeah, it does. I mean,
it keeps you all busy. It's kind of a built-in guaranteed work. So that's
Yep. And we've been approached by a few people to sell the data. It's just, it'll never, I'll say it right here, it'll never happen because it's all, even if there was a clause where after 5 years we could use some of this stuff, the technology is getting better. It's in an organized fashion that like only makes sense to these clients and to these specific tracts of land. And so it's not like a swath of an entire courthouse or even, like a certain date range even. And so there's a few different factors that play in there. We've been approached to have our data bought, and these people want to host these documents online so they are able to be accessed, but they're wanting to host only documents related to this specific area. It's not all of book 1. It's not all of book 2. Totally. It's 2 pages out of book 1.
Too specific and too clear. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, it's exactly like pinpoint accuracy. So
I appreciate that. I've seen in the industry so many times, and I mean, you can do a quick Google search of oil and gas lawsuits in Oklahoma, and you'll start seeing things very quickly of, someone that took proprietary data and did something questionable with it. And so I've always looked at this as, I want my ethics in this to not be, we're just here to make quick money. Yeah, we want to be here for the long haul with these people and have a reputation with our name. We're a small business. I didn't come from oil and gas. So for me to have a name that sticks out, we've got to be doing the right thing, keep our nose clean, and provide a good service. And with that, the good service for me is not just the same service that other people like us are doing. There's other imaging companies out there, and some of them may be technology forward, but as far as I'm concerned, we're up there with some of the most technology forward. We're some of the hungriest people out there to, we don't have large clients that year after year after year keep ordering from us. We don't have, contracts that last more than a month at a time. Sometimes it's a one-off section that someone calls and orders from us. I think last year we got somewhere in the ballpark of 75 to 80 1099s. I mean, and some of those are, some of those are companies that ordered every single week for an entire year, and some of those are companies that ordered one section the entire year. So, we're in that regard, my brother likes to say we're an equal opportunity employer. Anybody that wants to work with us, we were with one of the largest offshore drilling companies this year, and we are with some of the smallest mom and pop operations you've ever seen, and that's how I like it. I like those relationships we build. I like seeing what the big guys are doing. You walk into Google and you're like, oh my God, this is insane. I want this one day, and you also walk in the mom and pop shops and, it's two brothers sitting there working together. And I love that too.
And you like that too, for sure.
Yep. Yeah. And I think there's something to gain from both sides of those. And so it's been really fun working with landmen. It's been fun working with operators. That has been something that in the last year, I've really been putting a lot of my time and effort in. So outside of courthouse research, we also do just scanning of paper. It doesn't matter what it is. Right. We don't care what it is, by and large. We worked with Bureau of Prisons last year, and we were scanning in a bunch of blueprints for them. Nothing to do with oil and gas, just, service that was needing to be provided.
No, imaging is a huge deal. No, it's a smart business to be in, and I do like to see people who are implementing the tech, AI, and getting out there and compiling and working with this data. It's amazing.
Yeah. And some of the things we're seeing on that scanning side are really interesting. They're more stable projects for our guys. Where a land project may be 1 or 2 weeks for that particular project, these scanning projects seem to last 2, 3, 4 months sometimes. I mean, even longer sometimes. I mean, we've been servicing the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City since before COVID. I mean, it's a recurring budget that they spend on archiving historical, financial, legal documents, all of those types of things. Mm-hmm. But oil and gas is really fun, and that's where I see a lot of the technology coming from that's going to affect us. You got a librarian, they're not really concerned about scanning and
how fast
archiving
you
and
can
it's
do it.
quicker than they used to,
Yeah,
But in oil and gas, it's like, oh, you can get this to me quicker. You can get this to me quicker.
that's
Let's
right.
go. That means we can get people on the phones quicker. That means we can get the land lease quicker. We can get the drills out there. We can get everything that needs to happen. And that's what I see in this is tech forward. I'm not here to throttle anything or bottleneck anything, which I see a lot in the land space. I'm not talking about anyone in particular, but just my own experiences is, oh, well, let's just build this another day. It's a day rate. It's more money coming in. We're fattening this
There's a
budget.
lot of that.
That's my point of view. Could be a unique point of view that I've seen, but when you start looking at tech forward, you get these landmen questioning, oh, well, this is never going to take my job. This is never going to take my job, and that's the same guy that's sitting there going, let's build another day on this. Let's build another day on this.
That's 100%. If you can turn them out, the reputation is there for a good product. You get it in and out, and it's kind of a quality and volume thing. If you can do more, don't be billing people for wasted days. That's amazing.
Yeah. And times are changing. I think people are resistant to change. A lot of people are, and even myself to a degree. Oh,
yeah.
But when you see the benefits of this, and it might not even be financial in the beginning, until we find another way to bill some of these things, all we're doing is turning in a product quicker than we did last year. We're not charging any more for it. We're not spending more days on it. We're not billing more on it. It's just a product that's getting done quicker because we're implementing technology. Yeah. We'll figure out the rest on the backside. That's how I've always looked at it. These things will come, but we need to find, you got to find the product first. You got to be able to sell it, and you got to have something good. Otherwise, it doesn't matter what you're making off of it because it's going to just drive itself into the ground if it's not good.
Right.
And if it's taking a long time, and if it's just like what everybody else is offering, so how do we set ourselves apart? We harness as much technology as we can, and we try to align ourselves with as many people in the industry that are doing similar things. It could be competition, but at the same rate, like what Brian and I are doing, at a certain point, yes, we could be competitors to a degree if someone's just needing the stuff scanned in, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to sit down with him at a table and talk to him about new technology and talk to him about how he's organizing his business and being transparent about these things, because we're all going to be part of this shift, and it may come down to even, I was talking with some people last week about, day rates, and it's like, well, what happens when you offer a project cost to a client, and this is just kind of a new thought, but it's like, I think that's where some of this is going, is there's going to be massive shifts and changes here, and that's why you have all this resistance. You can get a
turnkey project instead of, a per day rate. We can you feel confident enough in your business and ability to push the data through and capture the images that you can say, hey, we can do this turnkey. Your costs, how quick your employees can turn it.
And we want, we want to, again, align ourselves with those companies that are doing this stuff so we can know, one, how to get our data into these systems, because all of them require some sort of integration. And then also just kind of, I hate to use this term, but riding on their coattails to a degree of like, you guys are in with these operators. You guys have the developers. You guys have all this shit already. Like, why would we not want to be a part of this with you and provide a service for you guys?
Teamwork and teaming up and collaboration. I'm a big fan. Hey, each person keep their little component, offer your special, niche ways about the way you do it. But I'm a big time fan of the open collaborative work for sure.
Colin McClellan from Digital Wildcatters Collide, he has this saying that has really stuck with me this year, and they put it on a lot of their shirts and things like that. And it's pretty simple, but it's evolve or die. And that's how I have looked at this from the beginning. It was like, if you are still using thumb drives when we're using Dropbox, evolve or die. You are going to be gone soon. You're going to be gone soon,
Yep.
And that's just something that has really stuck with me. And those are the types of players in this game that I'm like, man, one, we need more people like you, but two, they've also seen this thing where apply technology, and there's, education missing for people. So technology helps fill that. There's so much that can be done with this tech and with the knowledge that's there. So much of it's not being passed down to other people. And so it's creating this need for us to innovate quicker and get to the bottom line a little quicker. It's not so I can go play golf every day. I don't play golf. It's not so I can be out of this. I'll be in this warehouse till 5 o'clock every single day, but that's what I want to do. And I want to build a product, and there's still a few more shelves in here that need to be filled up. So,
sure.
it's all part of the game. And hopefully things like this help you guys too, on the geology side.
Oh yeah. No, imaging and being able to scan. Like I say, it's a really relevant topic and guest to have on the show, and we're getting pretty close on time here.
Yep.
I'll give a little bit of a spiel on the imaging. It's a really important part of what we're doing, and what companies like you provide are the people and equipment that people like the small oil companies that I work for can come and bring this old data over and get it digitized for a reasonable price. So before we go here, I put everybody on the hook for some words of wisdom before we part. Why don't you have at it?
Gosh, words of wisdom. As much as I have covered this in this specific conversation, don't work with friends and family. As much as I love it, and as much as I cherish my brother and the memories we have made and the progress we have made and the strong team we have built, it can be tough. It can be tough. It can be very tough. If you can do it, great. But you've really got to, it's tough when it's tough. When you've got to fire a friend, let somebody go like that. Yeah. You got to have a tough conversation with your brother. I mean, you've got to be able to just put them in this box as like an employee. And that's so hard to do when they're not. They're just not. Right. My brother's not an employee. He's my brother at the end of the day, and these guys that are my friends that work for us, or started with us when we first started the business, when I was, a year out of college, yeah, they're great buddies and they did help at a certain time. But when, rubber hits the pavement, it's like,
listen,
I want to retain friendships and I want to retain relationships. So that's my, my word of wisdom. And I know a lot of people do it, and hopefully my brother and I are successful enough to retire together doing it, and that's my hope and dream. But if I do have a word of wisdom, that, and start working out if you don't, start hitting the gym. It's not just for people that are recovering from alcohol use and things like that. It helps mentally, it helps physically. Half the time there's not a bad view in there. I'm an honest man, but I'm faithful to my wife, but it doesn't hurt that, you walk in the gym, there's a bunch of good looking people walking around.
Oh, I love it. Yep. And I couldn't agree with you more. You got to be careful with friends and family. Work relationships are business relationships, and you start to cross into some pretty tricky stuff. So I admire you and your brother for what you do. And I do think that you have what it takes. Listen, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being able to come on spur of the moment.
Yeah, of course.
And to everybody else out there, hit me up, come on the show. This is the Grizzled Geologist Podcast. Make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and the notification bell. And to all you imagers out there, don't sit on the copy machine. Hold on, I have to hit stop. My mouse fell down. We'll just cut that little end part. But dude, we have got a very good video.
You have to